Good Monday. This is Jay Brew, co-chairman of Seafried and Brew. Well, we've been having an interesting analytical discussion here at Seafried and Brew by going back into the past and looking at risk and the trends in risk. And I think that this is an important way that you want to look at risk is, once again, looking at it before it starts to happen, seeing it move on a trending basis. And typically we look at that over a year. But what we've been doing for some clients is to actually going back in the past, looking at the past 5 years. So when we look at the S&P Total Risk Index, that's the entire risk of a bank put into a composite rating, but it's made up of a number of different risks. Once again, it's made up of credit risk, earnings at risk, liquidity risk, capital risk, and we've added in national economic risk and state economic risk. So if you had issues in terms of credit risk over these past couple of years, it's interesting to go back in time to sit there and say, was there warning of the credit risk in our bank? So we have an example here to show you. We have 3 lines here. The first line is a dotted line, which is this particular bank's credit risk. We then have the orange line, which is their total risk score, and we've also put in the beige line, which is the reward score. So when we look at this, is that credit risk-wise, this particular bank was down around 33.33, which would be considered a low level of risk back in 2006. But we can see what started to happen is that this risk started to trend upward as we moved through 2008, further upward in 2009, to the point where the bank was in a high-risk position in 2010. So there was warning here at this particular bank that their credit risk was changing. So watching that trend in credit risk, very important, as well as looking at trends in other risks. As we look at their overall risk, that composite risk, is that really stayed in the moderate to high zone during this entire period of time. But the credit risk piece definitely had an impact in terms of affecting earnings during that time period. So when we think about that, it's not only the risk that was taken, but there was an effect to overall earnings at this particular bank. So there was a warning sign here that things were changing. And could this bank, going back, identify what exactly was changing so that they could use that information in the future to determine credit risk and the other risks and how it could impact them? Could they make changes? The point is that there can be discussion, there can be action that comes out of this type of risk trending. Then we look at the state risk, and this is even more interesting for this particular state, because back in 2006, risk was very low from the state economic risk. Yet what happened is that it suddenly started moving upward at a very fast rate to moving into the moderate to high zone. You can see that it just continued right up to the very high as we moved into 2009. Once again, the interrelationship between that increase in state risk and then the decrease in this particular bank's earnings. So when we think about state risk, is that actually they were given a 2-year time period to understand that that state risk was escalating at a very fast rate, and could they have had a situation where they could have been more proactive in terms of controlling that credit risk, in terms of controlling that credit risk profile, that would have made it that maybe you're still going to have credit issues, but could you have modified that during that time period? So risk trending is very important, and you want to, as both directors and management, be able to see that risk trend change, ask the questions about what is happening that is causing that risk trend to happen, and then are there actions that you can do strategically to be able to offset that risk. This is Jay Brew, co-chairman of Seyfried and Brew. Have a great week.